first installment of House Republicans' fulfillment of their misguided, billionaire-funded, pro-polluter, drill, baby, drill agenda. Now, I like Valentine's Day as much as anyone. I don't mean to be cynical. But what I don't do is introduce empty love letters to polluting industries masquerading as legislation, and that's what we're here to do today. This bill we're considering is one massive love letter to big oil, signed by the House GOP. Meanwhile, Americans are grappling with the actual fallout from the White House's unconstitutional, illegal freeze on federal funding across dozens of agencies, tariffs on our allies that will increase energy costs and inflation. Instead of addressing all of these things, we're here today with a little love letter for Valentine's Day from House Republicans to big oil. Now, H.R. 26, the Protecting American Energy Production Act, pretends to ban presidential fracking bans. Let me be clear, this bill is a solution in search of a non-existent problem. President Trump is not going to ban fracking. President Biden didn't ban fracking. No president, past or present, has banned fracking. And of course, now we do have President Trump. Democrats are not election deniers. We acknowledge that President Trump won the election. He is our president, and he loves fracking. Who are we kidding by passing this bill, pretending to stop him from banning fracking? Now, if Republicans really want to push back on presidential power and assert congressional rights, that would be interesting. We would love to work with Republicans on something like that. We could start with the fact that President Trump has unleashed his unelected buddy, a billionaire Elon Musk, to do all kinds of things in the first few weeks of his administration that ought to offend the sensibilities of the Article I branch of government, like blocking funds lawfully enacted by Congress that should be helping hardworking families and protecting communities from wildfires and droughts. Firing civil servants working on behalf of the country and inspectors general charged with rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. How about attacking civil rights and disability protections that Congress enacted into law? Attempting to abolish USAID, an agency that might not be familiar to many Americans, but is incredibly important to American interests. It advances U.S. global leadership all over the world and counters the malign influence of Russia and China. But we're here on the House floor to give Republicans a stage to gush over the oil and gas industry. This is political theater at its worst. And instead of addressing real crises like the climate crisis or the crushing cost of living for American families, Republicans are wasting everyone's time banning imaginary fracking bans, claiming it will somehow lower costs for communities and small businesses, but it won't. Now, what we're about to see is Republicans previewing their undying devotion and the many favors that they are going to be offering to big oil in the months to come. But let's review a couple of facts. The United States is already the largest producer of oil in the world. We're producing more oil and gas than ever before. In fact, we're producing more than any country in history. And what do we have to show for it? How's that working out for us? Well, we're facing volatile energy prices still because we're exporting record amounts of fossil fuel and because fossil fuels are global commodities vulnerable to international price shocks. The fossil fuel industry will do whatever it takes to make the most money, even if that is exporting its products in ways that increase costs for American consumers. There's a cost to this industry joyride. Communities living near this record-breaking production are bearing the brunt of fossil fuel pollution, and their health and well-being are paying the price. The United States should be leading the way to a new, cleaner future, but instead we're drilling deeper into this catastrophe. And it's not as if big oil is hurting right now. The oil and gas industry enjoys $15 billion in subsidies from American taxpayers each year. And that's just the direct handouts. When you factor in health and environmental impacts, because taxpayers pick up the tab for all of that, the United States spends $757 billion propping up the fossil fuel industry every single year. And what do we get in return for all of this generosity. It sure seems like unrequited love, because big oil has been colluding illegally with foreign cartels to purposely drive up gas prices for American consumers, increasing inflation and padding their pockets along the way. Big oil doesn't need any more favors. What it needs is to be held accountable. But that didn't stop President Trump from asking for $1 billion from the oil and gas industry during the campaign. Now, we're going to see big oil billionaires asking for more tax breaks and deregulation every day for the next 2 Congresses. But this bill is particularly absurd. If nothing else, the debate over this love letter to big oil makes one thing clear. House Republicans are more interested in passing love notes to big oil than in holding big oil accountable. Now, during the fracking process, oil and gas companies inject a high-pressure mixture of water, sand, and toxic chemicals into the ground to extract fossil fuels. It's a dirty business, and yet for years there have been loopholes around it to boost the industry's profits even further while leaving communities vulnerable to pollution. I'll highlight some examples. All industries, if they want to inject toxic pollutants underground, have to comply with the Safe Drinking Water Act. This makes sure that drinking water resources and public health are protected, but not fracking. Fracking companies aren't subject to the Safe Drinking Water Act regulations. They don't have to disclose any of the toxic chemicals that could seep in to your drinking water. Another example is the Clean Air Act. We can aggregate smaller nearby sources of pollution that can be regulated together to protect public health. That's something the Clean Air Act does that applies to all other industries, but not from oil and gas development. They have a special exception. Now, what about the Clean Water Act? Well, that has provisions to prevent polluted stormwater runoff from contaminating water sources, except if that runoff comes from oil and gas facilities. These are just a few of the loopholes that this industry enjoys, loopholes that have real impacts on public health, especially children's health. Studies have found that exposure to fracking and associated chemicals can lead to low birth weight for babies, preterm births, congenital abnormalities, asthma, and even certain childhood cancers. We should be able to agree that protecting children from these impacts and ensuring that communities have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink should be our priorities, not sending love letters to big oil. Unfortunately, this bill and the many other giveaways that are going to be coming our way in this Congress will not protect these communities. I strongly oppose this legislation and reserve